Hi, everyone. Mark here from DBT. We're going to get started in 2 to 3 minutes. We're just waiting for a few more people to join in. Whilst we're waiting, it'd be actually interesting to hear from you guys. Maybe if you put in chat a quick intro, your name, your position, and maybe what you did at uni. All right, we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. My name is Mark. I'm a solution architect here at DBT Labs. I help look after the Australasia region. It's my delight to be your host for today's Fireside chat. We have some really fantastic people here from RMIT and the University of Canterbury. The DBT Labs team and I really wanted to set up this webinar because we recognize that not all data challenges are the same. I come from a background in more banking, anti-fraud, anti-money laundering. And whilst there are certainly universal principles that will apply to all contexts, there are specific challenges that a university would face that I would never face. And so we have some experts here from different universities to dive into their perspective of data. And in this session, we want to explore their specific challenges, their successes, the transition from legacy tooling to modernity. And we really hope that we can leave you with valuable, actionable knowledge and some food for thought. The bulk of this session will just be a fireside chat. The conversation could lead us all different directions. And we'll end with some Q&A from the audience. A little bit of housekeeping about the Q&A. You should see a chat panel where we've been putting our names and our introductions. There's also a Q&A channel section. I've put a question that says, please put your questions here. You can like that question. And this is where you can raise any questions you might have throughout the session. If you see any questions that you like and would also like the answer to, please give it a thumbs up. And at the end, we'll have about hopefully 10 to 20 minutes of where we go through the most interesting questions. Cool. All right. You can give it a try just by liking the question that's there already. Give it a practice run. But while you do that, let me introduce the unis that will be represented today. So we have Sarah and Darren from RMIT. RMIT was established in 1887, long time ago, in Melbourne, Victoria, stone's throw away from me right now. Ranked 15th in the world for art and design subjects in the QS World University Rankings, and is in the top 130 universities globally. They have close to 90,000 students in 2023. And RMIT has 3 campuses, 2 sites in Australia, and 2 campuses in Vietnam, and a research and industry collaboration center in Spain. It's a huge privilege to have them join us today. We also have University of Canterbury in New Zealand. It was founded in 1873 as Canterbury College, and it was the first constituent college of the university in New Zealand. It's the second oldest university in New Zealand and is in the top 10 in the world for environmental education in 2025. There's 24,000 plus students as of 2023, and the University of Canterbury has 3 campuses spread throughout the city of Christchurch. We have 2 different scales of university over here, from RMIT to University of Canterbury. So we'll be able to get a really good broad perspective of some of the challenges that you might face as a university. That's enough from me. I've given you my intro. I'll quickly go through what I did in uni. I studied commerce and business information systems in Monash University. Big up to anyone in Monash Uni. I think I was one of 8 doing that double degree, and I promptly encouraged my young sister-in-law to do the same degree, and she said that it had been completely revamped. They got rid of business information systems as a degree. It's now a major as a part of IT, and it's got over 200, 300 students. So I like to think of myself as a visionary early adopter, and I'm really thankful for it, because the industry-based learning program they had over there was probably the reason I have a job at all. So that's it from me. Maybe I'll hand over to Sarah to answer your name, what you do, and what you did in uni.
Hi, I'm Sarah Taylor. I'm lead data engineer at RMIT. What I did at uni, so I put in the chat there, back in the olden days, the early 2000s, at Melbourne Uni, I did a double degree in geospatial engineering and cultural studies. And I now get a little bit of, cultural kudos for mentioning that I did an exchange semester at Penn State University in 2001, because now that I'm old enough to be retro, I can totally impress people by saying that I was actually in the States in 2001. And yes, it was pretty memorable. And later on, I started work in GIS world at the Electoral Commission. I found apparently it's quite common for women. I found that I liked coding a lot once I started doing it at work. So I did a postgrad certificate in software development. I've always loved working with that. I found that SQL hasn't changed much over those 20 years. And more recently, finished a PhD at RMIT University in geospatial science, but really unusual topic that meant a lot to me, which was historical geography of live music. So it involved making a geodatabase, but also talking to musicians.
That is super interesting.
Darren, and now my job, when I tell people what my job is, unless they work in data, they go, oh. I find it very interesting.
That's everyone's reaction when you try and tell people to be right. I just tell people I'm a professional nerd, and then go from there. So from my chat entry, you can see I've studied a few things. It's probably just a symptom of having a low attention span. And I've been in the education sector for around 10 years. 6 of those within data. So I sort of was in student administration and through some sort of managerial kind of roles, and then made a switch into data, realizing that I was doing a lot of stuff in my spare time to make life easier in my actual job. So I was dealing with data to do that, and then I realized I actually enjoyed that more than the educational management stuff. So I was like, why don't I do that as my real job and get my spare time back? So that's been a good career choice. So I've been doing that for maybe 6 years now in data.
Awesome. Cameron?
Hey, Cameron Mayer. So I'm the head of data analytics at University of Canterbury. So I did finance and then became a management accountant and somehow ended up in data. But yeah, unlike Sarah and Darren, I don't actually know how to code or anything. Like my son says, all I do is meetings and emails, and I don't have a real job. So luckily I have some very smart people who use the tool for me. So yeah.
I have I think one of our sales directors, he studied music, and I was like, how did you even get into data? But he's amazing as well. I actually think a great icebreaker is, how do you introduce yourself to new people? How do you introduce what you do to people that you meet for the first time? Because I often introduce myself as I'm in IT, and that's like the first gate. And if they answer, Oh, I'm in IT too. Oh, now I can talk about data, or I can talk about architecture. All right, that's enough fluff. Why don't we dive straight in? I have a beautiful fire going. I'd love to hear about your team's data structure and the types of roles that are in RMIT and UOC. Maybe we'll just start. Maybe Sarah, do you want to start? And we can see where we go
I'm
from
happy
there.
to start, but I'm going to emphasize that I can't know everything, and that's sort of a distinctive feature of especially a large university is we are large and there's always change. So I know certain parts of what happens here, but by its nature, we've got so many students with such a large institution that we definitely segment our roles a lot more than probably at a smaller institution, and there's pros and cons to that. From my perspective, I have this unusual sort of vantage point on data work at RMIT. After I finished my PhD, I was in a data role at RMIT in learning analytics before DBT Cloud and some restructuring and so forth. And then I went away for a few years to do a postdoc in something completely different, came back and went, well, look, so, everything's kind of, got to glow up here at RMIT. And that's by the time I returned, many of the data organizations that were across RMIT, which is, of course, a very large place, they'd been mostly centralized into the data analytics area. So people who'd come from different schools across RMIT had pooled together in my absence, and now a much more focused data and analytics team, and with very, very energetic leadership. And by the time I returned, we had the stack, in its very early days with DBT, and we had a few people who'd already sorted out things like the conceptual data model. And part of how that works, firstly, is there's just a lot of energy there behind it. Secondly, there's a lot of people with different specializations, and we still have that, but things are always going to change. So whatever we have now, there'll be subtle changes later. I guess the distinctive features here, apart from being large, is that we have specialists who work with data management, specialists who work with stakeholders, like their whole job is to talk to stakeholders, that's really quite handy. Then we have data science and visualization, and we have data engineering, and we sort of structure our day-to-day work in squads that are built around different domains of knowledge. But then we have shared knowledge across those different guilds, across those different squads. And everybody, as far as I know, loves guild day. So each sprint, one day out of every sprint, the guild. So in our case, the data architecture and engineering guild, even if we work with different areas like research data or applications or student admin and so forth, work in these different subdomains, one day out of every fortnight, and pretty much every day in the Teams chat, there's more general talk about how we do things rather than the exact topic we're looking at. I'll throw it out there and try more.
I really found that, so I came in a bit later than Sarah, and that guild day thing I've found is an amazing piece of time carved out to for the data engineers to come together, because that's the risk of that larger organization is people don't end up talking to each other, right? So and it's a sort of a way of breaking down those silos between the verticals, and so having that fortnightly piece of time carved out for professional development, working on like difficult stuff that will benefit all the teams. We do some of that as well. So having that what they call it, matrix kind of set up, it's got its pros and cons, but definitely having the that catch up with, for us, it's Sarah and I are both in the data engineering guild in two different squads at the moment, but we will be merged shortly. But there's people in research squad who are doing completely different things to us. It's great to see what they're doing, the challenges that they're facing, and we can also chat about how we've actually solved similar problems, or we're just about to dive into a particular thing and get that second opinion on how we might approach things. That's one of my favorite things of working here.
I think that's a great proactive strategy to start that because you're so right. Even in from my background, where you've got so many silos, but you still have cross-functional like data engineering across all different areas of the business. You speak the same language, and so those are like the best people to learn from sometimes. Awesome.
I think the other thing that as a larger organization is potentially a disadvantage as opposed to the smaller one is that you're a little more disconnected from the business, like the people at the front, at the coalface. I used to work at a private union, and I sat next to some of the deans and some of the program managers, and you got direct feedback on the data products that you're putting out in the wild. We're very fortunate that we have business partners who keep that relationship going, but it is definitely a different thing. And I struggle without our business partners. That's certainly a really important piece of the puzzle. Probably Cameron's time to have a chat about how things work.
Yeah.
It's a very, very different structure. I mean, obviously we are much smaller, so I think our entire sort of data team is probably the size of one of RMIT's squads. So you sort of say having that business partner as a conduit to the business, whereas my engineers often will just get emails directly from people saying, I need this done, I need it done now. And obviously depending who it is depending on how fast it gets done. But we did a similar thing where we had sort of separate domains and had, I have 4 engineers. One who's particularly good, Paul. The rest of them, they're okay. They're all watching, and they've been distracting me by sending me messages and Teams. So, except for Paul, he's been very good. But what we've done is actually had to sort of move everyone from those different domains to focus in the student area, because, I mean, sort of unlike RMIT, we are predominantly focusing on migration at the moment. So in order to speed that up, we've done that. But being a smaller team, it has allowed all of the engineers a really good oversight of all the areas. So I'm very confident that if I asked any of my engineers to look at any sort of the different data set domains, they'd easily be able to do that. So that's the benefit of having a smaller, close-knit team. Plus, you know, we all sit together. We sit in the same room as all the analysts, and there's a real sort of good sort of team collaboration there. So but we don't have that the business partner thing. So so a lot of what we get is either Teams messages or emails. It's moving more into like the ServiceNow ticket sort of space, but you do get a lot of people who will just go, I need this and I need it now, and but it's kind of
having someone to, so our squads have a bit business partners, having someone to kind of set the framework for the next 3 months of this is the stuff that you tell us what you want to prioritize as your big ticket items for the next 3 months. We tell you what we think we want to prioritize for the long-term benefit, not just the short term. And then there's this negotiation over prioritization that ensures that that we do make headway into the longer term and not just fighting fires.
We do the same thing where we do our quarterly planning. Where we have our senior stakeholders come and say, and they have to agree, is this the priority? Because if so, everything else has to go on the back burner. You can't suddenly come to us asking those questions. But I'm sure you guys have the same issue that often those priorities change halfway through a quarter. So you just have to adapt.
Yeah, but then having that trade-off conversation as well around, so we need to reevaluate what's important.
Yeah. There's often a shift there's one shift in technology that you have to do in migrating off old stacks, and then later on there's probably going to be a shift in processes, and when you scale up, you obviously ways of working sometimes won't work, but they worked brilliantly well at the start. And I'm curious to hear actually about the migration and legacy systems, about where you came from in terms of the old technology stack, what motivated the shift from legacy into DBT Cloud, and and how that experience has been so far. Maybe we'll start off, Cam, you mentioned about the migration path, and
Yeah.
you want to kick
So
off?
we are still, so we're moving everything to Snowflake from on-premise SQL servers. So obviously we were using SSIS beforehand. So we started using DBT a year ago. And yeah, it's been absolutely great. So I think, the team massively, well, they're massive fans. Just little things like, version control, being able to use branching. It's actually sped things up, especially now that I've got all 4 engineers working on migrating just our student data. For them being able to all work at the same time, with the same project is just massively helpful. So beforehand, it would have just been an absolute pain trying to do that. So yeah, it's been great. I mean, the issue I think for us a lot of the time is just the different source systems that we're trying to get data from. So that can be a bit challenging. We have a lot of source systems, a lot of them are legacy systems that are also being migrated to new systems. So not only are we trying to do that, is we're trying to now grab bits of data that they've managed to get out of the new system, as well as everything from the old, and work out which bits we're actually trying to use and which bits are no longer. So that's kind of where we're at the moment. So we've moved everything to cloud. So obviously we used to be a Cognos platform, but obviously everything now is Power BI Cloud. So yeah, so that has all helped massively with that.
Yeah. Was there any key themes that really prompted that shift from SSIS and into cloud and Snowflake? Any key issues that you were facing, or?
I think a lot of it is just it's just the speed. Especially for us using Snowflake, being able to sort of really ramp up how much processing power we need is so helpful. A lot of it is about the speed of the reporting. So we used to be separate teams where we were an analytics team and a data warehouse team.
Gotcha.
Whereas now obviously we're combined, but a lot of the front end stuff is the stuff that gets the attention. A lot of the deans, they don't understand the amount of work going in from the engineers in actually making sure that the data they're getting is usable. No one sees that. Whereas everyone sees, the Power BI front end and go, but why hasn't it refreshed at 7 a.m. when I woke up and wanted to check what admissions look like? So a lot of it is trying to speed up that entire process. I mean, at the moment, we're getting our data from our legacy SMS, which then gets copied over to Snowflake, which then goes to Power BI. So it's, by the time it finishes, it's 9 o'clock in the morning. So the work the engineers are doing is going to allow that to be, refreshed before people even get into the office. Because there's nothing worse than getting a call from somebody who, is generally your boss's boss saying, this hasn't updated yet. So so a lot of it is for us is about that speed, and security and just ease of use as well. So
or if there happens to be a failure, right? Hours of loading, it has to start again.
That's it. I mean, often we'll sort of find is with our current sort of process flow, if that fails, that's updating the next day. Because you can't suddenly just go, okay, we're just going to run everything again. It's just, no, we just have to wait for the next day. So and that's when you get particularly angry phone calls from certain people.
It's easy to snowball because you have to do catch-up loads and
That's exactly it. Or even then, worse if you get like a partial copy over, and then the data, people feel like they can't trust the data, and it's just so that becomes really tricky. So
being able to build warnings and stuff into the DBT pipeline is really helpful too. So you can sort of see some of those issues before you're presenting it to stakeholders.
I was going to ask, how about from RMIT? What did the old stack look like, and What motivated the shift?
Well, we still have a lot of, I guess I would emphasize that some legacy systems are probably going to be around for a long time because the nature of a university is there's some things you just have to hold on to. The student data is in our old friend Sam's, and I don't know that that's going to go anywhere soon. But there'll always be change, new systems everywhere, constant change. And certainly I've seen over a few decades, is it like when we try to go, here's the new thing to rule them all, it's like just becomes a new standard.
Another thing.
Another thing. So I can see from the old documentation of when our, very much appreciated colleagues were choosing this stack a few years ago, they were thinking about things like standards and version control, and they were thinking about the ability to bring systems together rather than replace them, and the ability to have version control, which even now is just this, I love having this moment with new starters where you go on, you can run it. You're not going to break someone else's work yet. And that they just go, oh, really? Oh my gosh. Because they've all had the experience of like walking on eggshells where you can't sort of fix stuff incrementally. So I can certainly offer a perspective on what it was like to try to bring data sources together, like the learning management system and the student administration system, and to bring them together into reports before. Yes, there was a lot of Python. There were pipelines that took hours. We know those, literally hours. And then if they broke, you had to run it all again. Some of them, I'm not sure if it's worth bragging, it's how long some of those pipelines took. They took as long as they took. But, they only ever get bigger because, of course, we're just getting more and more data coming in. So the analytics side of things pre this stack was like just trying to get things to talk to each other, and by its nature, when you do that, you're going to come across a lot of barriers as to what you're allowed to see, what you're allowed to develop. You couldn't see what the code was unless you had full access to the data, and sometimes you just want to know what's in the box. Like you don't actually need the whole thing. So we had these kind of systems that sort of allowed sharing, but like it's very unsatisfying for anyone who's working with data regularly. We generally vastly prefer to be able to code something and repeat it rather than have any clicky sort of GUI things like that. We want to see where things come from. It's not enough to go, oh, this is the thing. You actually want to see the back end of it. And moving to DBT, one of the decision-making things was, we can have version control. We can have people working on these things at the same time. We can keep legacy systems going, but also bring things into our data lake and start there. It's so easy now to bring data sources together. It's just, and we take it for granted. It used to be dreadful. Now it's a thing to bring the data sources together to report on things.
On that access point, Sarah, when I started only a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago now at RMIT, I started in a data management role and then made a shift across to the engineering side. But I remember the first couple of weeks, I needed to get some data, and at that point we hadn't hit the tipping point of our data analytics platform really being the main go-to. So we were using DBT and Snowflake, but it was in a sort of infancy. So I had to get some data off a product called Denodo. And I remember having this conversation where I was like, I need this data. And then they're like, well, what table and what columns do you need to do this? So like data exploration was just awful because you needed to individually request what table and columns you needed to access and have someone like physically switch that on for you. Whereas now with our data modeling in DBT, we set up a security classification tagging or config, and then it's all role based, right? So each of the squads have particular roles and each of the roles have a sort of hierarchy of public, trusted, protected, and whatever what's the restricted, the extreme one. And so each like role may be able to access various levels of that. But basically, if your role allows you seeing that data, then you can see it. You don't have to. There's none of this like going and
go and ask
what is where. And then Yeah, you've got DBT Explorer as well, where you can start like actually just searching for stuff if you need to, which again is just a big change from that. Right?
Yeah. And here's where we just have to put a shout out to the decision makers that came before us. It would have seemed easier at this time back in 2021 to go with the incumbent products. So there is there's often a selection bias to say we already have this thing, so therefore it will be easier. So they took a chance back then to be early adopters of DBT, and it is easier. And in this case, it worked out. Obviously, sometimes it doesn't always work out, but it seemed like it would be easier to go with incumbent products back then. But the reasons that they went with DBT are the reasons that we like it now. And Darren and I and many of my workmates, we've been around data for a long time. We know what things can be frustrating and what it looks like when everything's working. All happy families are alike, and so forth. Like, we know what can work, and we know that a lot of it is about version control and about being able to see other people's code and, incremental improvement and so forth. And that's what we have with DBT. Getting that product alone, of course, it's not going to make things work just by itself. We're all reasonably jaded about here's a new thing. And I was like, no, this new thing is actually very useful because it kind of fits into ways of working that most of us prefer.
Yeah.
And it's one of those products where it's kind of grown on us rather than becoming the opposite. Usually products, and we're not we're not salespeople, but usually you get the sales pitch and you're like, wow, this is amazing. And then you gradually realize that, oh, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do this, it doesn't do that. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, what have we done? Whereas everything so far has been like the complete opposite. We're like, oh wow, we can as we learn new features and you guys add new features, it's just becomes more and more of just an absolute asset.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, when I first started, I was wondering, I've never heard of this DBT thing before, and then they got me to do a bit of a demo, and as I got into it, I was like, why didn't anyone invent lineage and documentation and all of these things that are so natural to just write? Why didn't anyone do it before?
We all did different. We had versions of it where we had to do it ourselves with Python, and it was fine, but it was not really integral to what we were doing. It was like we had to do it to do other stuff, and it was a bit like I'd rather this was outsourced to some other template, and that's what we have now. I do note that early on the consideration one con on an old documentation about what stack to go with was that DBT, there is a little bit of a learning curve. Like, it's not just click it and it does everything for you. There's a learning curve, but that, of course, is part of what makes it useful, is because it is customizable. It's not everything all out of the box all at once. So there's just a small moment where people have to get used to that. But if they've worked with SQL before or ever had to try and connect data from different sources, they'll see the benefit.
Let's talk about that.
We found that as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say we found that as well, because we've obviously had it for a lot less than you guys, but the learning curve has been there, but it hasn't been a steep learning curve. Like, all the engineers have picked it up really quickly, and they like legitimately all rave about the tool. So we looked at one of the sort of the other competitors maybe a wee while ago when they approached us and said, hey, would you like a demo? We're like, absolutely. But on a slightly different note, aside from use and more from a budgetary perspective, like the cost to sort of usefulness ratio compared to the competitors is way better. So, when one of the big competitors came knocking, we had a look, and then they showed us what the price would be. We were just laughed. You can't compete. But that's more of a sort of a budgetary consideration.
But even like one thing that we've probably all faced with the old school on-prem thing is that you end up breaking stuff without realizing. So even just that little feature of having external exposures where you can within DBT like list your dashboards and what models are being utilized by those dashboards, that facilitates discussion with your stakeholders and also like product owners that you go, actually, I'm going to make this change in the background and I know what I'm potentially going to break. So you can have that conversation prior and
rather than
you have this sort of more robust.
Or have that long-term effect of like people always feeling like they're on eggshells, like I can't touch that because it might break something. I don't know what it might be, but let's not change anything.
So, and that was to your point, Mark, around that like visibility of the lineage and being able to see the data.
I think we've touched on this already, but adopting a new tool can always be quite daunting, and it might introduce a new way of working. RMIT has been on DBT Cloud for a while. How has DBT Cloud helped with your team's growth and onboarding?
So we're early adopters. I can't take credit for that. I sort of arrived on the scene a few months after everything was rolling. I definitely had the moment of going, what is this? What is DBT? What? So there was a dark period where pretty much no one knew what this was meant to be or how it would work. I still remember that quite clearly. And Darren and I talked about the Coalesce conference last year as well, just this period where like, what is happening? How do I use this thing? So we had our own onboarding in the early days. But now the onboarding process, like the DBT Cloud jobs, they do all these things that we can more or less take for granted now. They schedule things and we'll see when they've failed, etc. But the bulk of what we do, certainly with my workmates, is we develop without going on other people's toes. And pretty much any new starter, I have to say, no, go on, you get your own dev schema, you can build this and no one cares until you make a pull request. And that takes so long to sink in for people, but they have to see it. So pretty much everyone who starts here, I'll enjoy that moment where I, get them to set up a test branch, et cetera. And then I say, go on, press build. And then they see the dev schema with their name in it. And then I'm like, why don't you just put something stupid in there? And I'll say, why don't you just make a field called test. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't impact on other people immediately. So we have, of course, the learning curve of showing people what the commands are and what the expectations are. We have guardrails built in at various points. So it's kind of like total freedom, but very clear expectations. And like a lot of things, what makes it great is the same thing, two sides of the same coin. You could do anything. So we have to have guardrails saying, but we'd really like you to do this, this, and this. So when we have people starting, we'll show them how to use DBT. Generally, that's pretty short learning curve. It does depend on people's level of SQL experience, but as a rule, it's not that the difficulty to outcome ratio is relatively low. We have SQL style guide of how we want stuff to look, and we have in our CI/CD pipelines for when you're making a pull request, it will just say hard no if it doesn't pass that formatting check. So that can be a little bit off-putting for people when they get started. I highly recommend anyone thinking about setting up their stack that make a pipeline that says hard no on these things that are socially really awkward to bring up otherwise. Just say, no, it just says it like it's not going to pass. I'm not going to sit here and say I hate that, like the thing will actually fail. I wish we'd been able to put in something like Project Evaluator early on, but it wasn't around. We have some rituals that we've built up over time around pull requests and how that works. We still have people involved, and I think there will be for some time. I don't think it's going to be. We've automated various parts, but it's never going to be no humans involved, CrowdStrike kind of like just see what happens kind of thing. We have twice weekly production releases, but pretty much the rest of the time, people in different squads are building their models, testing to see if they build. We try to make use of existing models on production as much as we can now to stop sort of like one of the difficult things with DBT is you can end up building everything. So we try to have a little bit of a guard against that. We have our expectations that we try to lay out about how we'd like to structure things. They're more subjective though, so they come in with pull requests, naming conventions and so forth. And we do, I think Darren will be able to speak to this better, but we've tried to fit everything to the conceptual data model. That's our foundation, not something that's going to change. A lot of what's built into the stack and into our processes is something more abstract than all the day-to-day, like the sources are going to change, the exact structure is going to change, but the more generic topics that we're dealing with, they aren't going to change as much. I'll admit that we've had these periods where we've enthusiastically all figured out how to do things, and then when we do have people starting a bit later, I can forget that they're not all in our club. So we kind of talk DBT and stuff now, and we always have to remember that it's not common parlance. Luckily, SQL much is common parlance, but always have to have this moment where we tell people, look, we didn't know this before either. So, just keep going. You'll see the benefit of it, but we do not expect you to know this already.
I'm interested to hear from Cam and you, and Darren, if you were hiring for another analyst or an engineer, what skills would you be comfortable with them learning on the job, and what skills would you reckon that they would need if they wanted to start on DBT?
Well, I hired a new engineer probably 3 or 4 months ago, and I basically said you had to know DBT.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, it's for me, I probably wouldn't look at an engineer who didn't know DBT and Snowflake. But that's our stack, and to be honest, we've looked at everything, and we feel like we've got the 2 premium products in the market. So for us, it's sort of, but I think it's also tougher for our situation than it is for our, I have 4 engineers.
Yeah.
And having had quite a few chats with Sarah and Darren now, I've sort of got a newfound respect for what my guys are doing, because they do everything. They've had to learn how to do, everything from doing the APIs, learning Snowflake, all of our external network access stuff. They do all the data management as well. So they are doing everything within the 4 of them. So be able to bring someone in who already has experience with DBT, already has experience with Snowflake, for me was a must. So yeah, I mean, if anyone who's watching wants a job at Canterbury in the future, you need to learn DBT. Sorry.
Yeah, that's helpful. That's a helpful perspective, because I think small teams, you just have to wear so many hats.
There's a lot less phone a friends.
Yeah, and the thing is, it's like there's certain amounts of on-the-job training that we're able to do, but being such a small team, suddenly if you've got one person training someone else,
you've lost 2 people.
That's 30% of the one experienced person's workload gone for a month or so, which unfortunately, being quite a small team, we just can't afford. So yeah, so it was great that we managed to get someone who'd already had experience with it, already knew how to use the tool well. They've been able to sort of go, oh well, this is what I did at my last role, what are you guys doing? And having that back and forth has been absolutely awesome. So yeah. So yeah,
100%. How about for you, Sarah and Darren?
Well, it's going to be different because we're bigger, so we don't have to have people who know all those things. So that it's just fundamentally going to be a different picture there. But I generally prefer people who are comfortable with version control of any kind. I don't really feel like explaining to someone what Git is, but I can roll with that as well. Some foundation in a normal coding language is helpful, but not essential. SQL is non-negotiable. So if I have to tell you what SQL is, then I don't really have time for that. I actually have quite a lot of time for describing how to run jobs and how to submit pull requests and so forth in our system. Got a lot of time for that. And we have to tell people about the nuances of RMIT. If someone came from outside and knew all the business rules at RMIT, I would be like, who are you? This is just, I cannot expect that. It's just not going to happen. So there's always going to be some training time here involved in figuring out. RMIT also works with TAFE, so vocational education as well as higher education and different campuses, and there's a lot of business rules.
Yeah, it's like two separate businesses in a way.
Yeah. There's going to be time spent learning that. So being just clever enough and open enough to using tools and not just saying, there's a problem, I'm going to ask someone else. I'm not sure what the exact adjective is for that character trait. Can code, I'm not sure. Attitude, incremental improvement. I know that agile can be a bit of a, cheesy term. True agile, I am still genuinely a fan of. So we want working code over documentation. So coming in with those kinds of general understandings about ways of working is very important to me. And yes, SQL and ability to learn and keep incrementally improving on things.
We've been lucky as well in that at RMIT we do have software development courses, programs we call them, and we've used they have an internship as part of that, and we've taken that side of things quite seriously and had interns working with the data and analytics team probably almost every year.
They've all been great.
Been super clever students that we basically can have. We've got a little bit of capacity where we can, train them in some of the various aspects, and also so it works well for them. But then also we get the benefit at times when there is the opportunity to hire them on as juniors. We've had a few people come through that avenue as well, and that's been, some of those guys have been fantastic. They've generally come through that software development side of things. So SQL is probably a smaller aspect of some of their what they've done in their studies, but the people that we've had through have been fantastic. I think we've hired at least 4. About that.
And they all have the founding in software fundamentals, but emphasizing that some of our other colleagues have come from the other avenue of working, having done the reporting side of things, and they tend to be coming in with the immense advantage of knowing what real life data looks like and what to do about it. That is a very valuable experience to come in with as well. Or you can come in with software engineering fundamentals of knowing how to incrementally build stuff and test things and so forth. So our intern students have been fantastic. Some of them, they have different qualities, but I'm certainly a fan of some of our younger, our junior engineers who are very happy to ask questions and call stuff out and just, we don't expect you to know all this already, but we would expect you just to ask if you don't understand something or try and figure stuff out. That is a very difficult thing to have to instill if it's not there already. But luckily we do have that here. So a commitment to sort of shared standards and a bit of honesty about what you know and what you don't know goes really a long way. And the rest of it is basically, I think we get used to, it's a room full of really smart people. I think we just take that for granted. Not everyone can just go, oh, well, I'll just take the random person in my office and tell them to do X, Y, Z. We mostly can do that. But,
that's awesome.
I think setting up that culture as well, regardless of hiring, of being open to, I don't know everything and I can't know everything.
Darren and I are both conflict avoidant. So we're nitpicking, but conflict avoidant. So there's this constant negotiation of no, these standards are actually really important, and I'm not going to let that slide. But also, let's avoid conflict and let's keep working towards that. That works well in a university data scene. It might be different in different kinds of industries, but here there's always going to be compulsory reporting and legacy systems and just innate entropy and complexity that is just always going to be there. So having a bit of head on your shoulders as well as the ability to deal with that is extremely valuable here.
Yeah, I think that's been really helpful because it's given a perspective on if you have a smaller team, you really need to someone with a good level of foundation, so you don't have to, from what Cameron said, you don't have to teach them for foundation, and they can hit the ground running. Whereas if you have a bigger team, you have a little bit more luxury to train and maybe not expect that level because you can you have that time to invest into them.
And when we were
That's
talking
really...
to Cameron earlier about, like, and he was feeling maybe conscious of the fact that it's a smaller organisation, a smaller team and so forth, my comment was that if we didn't have these structures that we have in place here, it would be horrible. Like, we have to have, because you can be more nimble when you're smaller, and with a larger organisation like this, if we didn't have some of those fundamentals set up and some of these really structured roles, like the business partners and then the data quality people, if we didn't have that, even though it can be quite difficult at times, if we didn't have that, this could be a big white elephant. It would be really bad. Yeah, it's
for sure.
But also compulsory.
And at the same time, you can also, if you're a small team, over plan and over process and not be as maybe slower as a big organization, but actually not have that many people. So you've really got to do a stock take on what are the resources that you have and available, and make the wisest decision. Cool. Let's go to the next question. If you do have any there's not many Q&As coming in, so we're just going to keep talking. If you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A section. But we'll finish off with last two questions. Firstly, how do you make sure that you satisfy business prioritization? So how do you get so many requests every day? How do you make sure that the work that you're doing is actually aligning with the needs of the business? And maybe for this one, we can start at Darren.
Sure. So I guess that we've got that, firstly, that business partner relationship that helps us with the prioritization side of things. But then we also get, and I'm sure, Cam, you've probably got the same thing, where you've got that demand while you're making that shift over from legacy to the more modern stack, that there's that demand for people to kind of almost lift and shift and just say, hey, we got these crappy data models. We want them. We want the output from them. And we want that now. So there is that temptation to just put that crappy data model into DBT because you can. But so there's that balance of short-term versus long-term perspective. So for us, when we get that, the way that we've kind of structured our DBT setup is that we've got our staging layer where we do some light transformations and so forth, but then we've got marts and projects as two very separate areas where marts there's this real strict approach where everything's got to fit with our conceptual data model and to dimensional modeling standards. And the idea there is it becomes this trusted one-stop shop to then build out our projects and sort of source of truth for people to be referencing. And we have metrics marts that are built on top of those DIMs and facts. But that all kind of goes back to this conceptual data model. Not everyone's kind of comfortable with that idea of conceptual data modeling. We were, again, very fortunate to have some clever people at the start who made some good decisions. And we utilised an organisation called CORDIT, which is I've got it here in front of me, Council of Australasian University Directors of Information Technology. So that's why they call it a short name instead. But they actually have a bunch of resources. And one of those resources in there is a conceptual data model for higher education. And that became a starting point, which, again, clever people made some adjustments to that. But that was basically, dividing things up into domains, like big chunks of what are the business functions, I guess, almost, that happen within our institution. So, you've got student management, which is the life cycle of the student from application through to graduation. Then you have things like the research domain and the various things that happen within there. So that becomes this kind of guiding star for how the long-term stuff should happen. And then we have these short-term things that come in as well, where those marts, we're sort of trying to take this just enough design upfront approach where you're planning out. There's a book called Agile Data Warehouse Development, I think it's called, which is a good one if anyone's just starting out on that journey, where you plan a few dims and facts ahead so you can get that idea of where you're heading with things. You've got enough context to know what's going to affect what, and get started. Don't try and plan everything before you start building, or build everything before you start releasing it, sort of along that agile lines. But then we have these really kind of shorter term demands of like, we need this dashboard. We already have this dashboard off our legacy system. So we have this projects area, which is almost like a little bit of a quarantine area for us in some ways, where we have a little adjust our expectations as to what goes in there. So our expectation is still like clean code. So if it's crappy code, it will get cleaned to go in there at the very least to make it readable. And then ideally, if people have the capacity, they'll build that with the intention of having marts in mind. So still kind of thinking about dimensional modeling, maybe having a few models as intermediate models that build out that final reporting model. And then when people have that kind of capacity and they're building a little bit of foundations towards the marts, as they're building some more of these projects that are not quite 100% in terms of what we would really like them to be, then they start to get that picture of what the marts are going to need. And so even just that, like making some small steps in the background means that we can then use that to inform the building of the marts, where we're like, this stuff has to be pretty strict and reusable. And then with the idea that we swap those marts in as the foundation for those projects gradually. So that's happening as we speak.
That's a really smart way to go about, almost like a cultivated drafts area, and then puts the onus on them to start thinking of, is this worth creating the
and when we start to see, hey, we're reusing this same kind of logic in multiple places for our projects, then we go, okay, either that needs to live in a mart, or we need to create a macro that reproduces this little chunk of code that we keep reusing, so that we have this reliable, consistent piece of code, rather than having these disparate sources of truth where you adjust one thing in one spot and then you forget to adjust it somewhere else.
Yeah, awesome. All right, so we have 2 minutes left. No, that's okay. We could probably go on for hours talking, but I wanted to wrap up with one last question. What's one piece of advice, maybe from each of you, that you wish you had received when you were starting out? Who wants to kick off? Okay, I'm going to nominate Sarah.
And when we say starting out, we mean starting out on the DBT stack?
On DBT, yes, on DBT.
Yeah. I wish I had I say there's plenty that I received and I'm grateful for, but one that I wished I'd received early and was able to work with was building in some sort of project evaluation into the pipeline from the very start.
That's a good one.
Too late now. We're doing our best.
Darren?
I'll just go with one that was put in, and that was around linting. So putting in those, as Sarah mentioned before, these are the hard and fast rules of, if the code doesn't at least fit this nice structured format where our colleagues can at least read it, because we're all doing it the same way. That I think is an important thing, that if someone's starting out, and I'd put that really high up on the list, because once your code is garbage,
it's hard to run through the rest
really
of
hard
it.
to come back.
Yeah. Cameron?
Yeah, I think that's sort of similar, as like, making sure that you keep everything like structured and patterned. And like my engineer sort of said, it can be a bit daunting when you first start DBT if you've never used it, but you just need to keep going, and then suddenly it's like, oh, okay, it's starting to make sense. This is what I need to do, and that, yeah, I think that's the thing. It's just like, just keep going with it. Don't give up, and yeah, it'll all make sense pretty quickly.
Awesome. Well, thanks everyone. Big ups. If you could find out the button to react, please react with an applause for Sarah, Cameron, and Darren for joining us. Such a great knowledge trust. I hope you enjoyed the dialogue. I thoroughly did. Thank you for joining. You'll be receiving a post-event email detailing a few next steps you could take, and we should be in contact shortly. But really, thank you so much, Sarah, Darren, and Cam for coming on and chatting with us.
Thanks all.
See you, everyone.
Cool.
Thanks.
Cheers.